So without further ado, Duke UNC, one of the best rivalries in sports, tipping off the Saturday matchups that we're handicapping here on Beat the Closing Number. KenPom makes this game Duke minus 11 as we record here on Friday morning. No odds out quite yet. UNC smack dab on the tournament bubble, not just for the sake of Joe Lunardi's projected bracket, but also FanDuel has UNC right around minus 125 to make the NCAA tournament. I have all the latest bracketology odds up over at thelines.com. Despite the fact, Justin, that UNC during this 6-game winning streak, heading into the Duke matchup, trying to get into the March Madness field, shooting 47.8% during this stretch, their opponent shooting 33.8%. So how likely is that to continue against Duke in the rematch, where Duke covered as a 13.5-point favorite? You could say, okay, why is the market only adjusted 2 points, where it's not like these teams are playing on a neutral, they're playing in the Dean Dome? Well, Duke has continued to outproduce the market's expectations, and a big reason why, they're playing five-out basketball in a big way. 45.5% of Duke's field goal attempts have come from behind the arc. That's just outside the top 50 nationally, so that may not really strike much interest statistically. But if you look over the three-point attempt rate over the last 3 years for Duke under John Shire, it's an increase of about 8%, right smack dab on 8% in terms of three-point attempt rate over the last season. So Duke has really transformed offensively. Isaiah Evans, their stud freshman, has come along as well in a big way. He's been a microwave scorer, not to use a cliche, off the bench. Cooper Flagg has been a stud at both ends of the court. They blitzed Wake Forest on Monday night. I believe that's 6 straight covers, or at least 5 for the Blue Devils. So how do you handicap a game where Duke, as we touched on before we got started here on the podcast, wants to hang the ACC regular season title banner, and UNC playing for a ton at home in a revenge spot rematch?
I mean, tough one to figure out, right? Duke team's good. It's interesting, the expected probabilities to win and lose games essentially pile up to lead to a shot quality record with 4 losses, but only one game the entire year dipped below the 50% mark to have a distinct loss. So one distinct expected loss, 4 aggregate expected losses. And that's not very different from the 27-3 that they are to be 26-4. They are dominant. I don't bet a lot of Duke games, Eli. I don't, because this is a hard team to bet. I mean, it's what I talked about in my 3-minute mini TED at the top of the show. It's like, this is one of the toughest teams to get a fair shake on from the book. And I mean, that I was smiling while you were looking, while you were talking, because I was looking at the page on Shot Quality Bets for their stats. 4th in spacing, 6th in 3-point shooting, 8th in fewest shots attacking the rim allowed, 8th good passing, 13th efficient in transition, 16th defensive rebounding, and 16th in low turnover rate. So where are you going to go? What are you going to do? How are you going to stop? It really is more like, what do they want to do? This is are they playing with their food in their biggest rivalry, in their best year, and with one of their best players in a long time, which is crazy because I'm still watching Zion Williamson throw down insane dunks at the NBA level to this day, and the impact in the league is still being felt from all those guys. And Flagg's next. That is just true. He is neck and neck with Broom, who is 4 or 5 years his senior, competing in the same realm, and we'll see how they stack up come tournament time in just 2 weeks. But I'm inclined to say you want to continue to take Duke, and they're having this historic season. I think they have every reason to just continue to do it. I don't really think it's that difficult for them. Not in this ACC. I don't think they've had to really put their foot down. I mean, North Carolina certainly has not. Look at the games on this win streak. You want to call it a win streak? It's a gift streak. It's Christmas time in Chapel Hill. Virginia Tech, Miami, Florida, Florida State, Virginia, NC State, Syracuse, and Pittsburgh are the games outside of Clemson and Duke that they've played since February began. I would hope they only lost Clemson and Duke, or else something's very wrong and they would have no business sniffing the tournament. Thank goodness they made good on the back half, the easy back half here that they were gifted after losing to Stanford, who is good, by the way, not too bad of a loss, but should have probably beat Pittsburgh on the road if they were that good. And yeah, the Duke losses don't look great. But also losing to Louisville, okay. Losing to Florida, all right. Losing to Alabama, Michigan State, Auburn, Kansas maybe doesn't look great right now, but that was early in the season. But I don't hate their resume. I know the numbers are going to tell me to take North Carolina. I know they are. We've been high on them the entire time. We've been betting on them the entire way here because we weren't down on them to begin with. So, yeah, I think you stick with it. I think you get a game that stays within double digits because North Carolina, like I hate to say it, needs it, but they're going to play the full 40. I don't know what Duke's going to do. I think the win is more than enough for the Blue Devils here. And who knows? Maybe the crazy thing happens and they pull it together in the last game of the season, Saturday, rivalry game, everything about done. So what makes this so interesting with the schedule is this was either going to be the biggest game of the season or it wasn't going to matter. And the teams are going to have to come in and figure out who wants to play for what. And I don't know. I don't think Duke wants to give North Carolina an easy win and a credit to their resume. I think they would like to blow them out, but you got to think it's going to be jumping. They need to do everything they can, I think. And I like taking the points in college basketball games to begin with. So I would imagine people like Duke. I'll take some North Carolina. I'll do it. We'll see. I don't know. Is the number out yet?
Nothing out yet. KenPom 11. I would assume it's going to be taxed a little bit more than that. So maybe
I'd take 9.5. I think 9.5 is probably about the lowest I'd go. If it's 9, if it's 8.5, I don't want anything to really do with it. The shot quality bets model projection is usually a little low on Duke, which is a little alarming, but we have this one at 1 full possession at 3 points. So I'm not that aggressive. I'd probably put it like 7.5, 6.5, but I have to run my numbers. But again, the home court late in the season, we'll see. It depends. It really depends how Duke wants to play it. It's such a unique team. It's hard. It's a hard team to bet.
Go back to the first meeting. Duke got off to a huge start off of UNC's turnovers. Tar Heels racked up 14 overall in the game. Duke scoring 19 points off of those miscues and 1.56 points per possession in the low post. We touched on that from the beginning of the season. Yeah. UNC's interior defense is very vulnerable, not only against Duke, but against, across the country. Maluwatch Flag should have a big game. Also, I hinted at this from the get-go of this handicap. Flag's defensive numbers are absurd. 2.9 defensive win shares. That's tied for first in the nation, most by any ACC player since 2017. 7.1 defensive BPM, 87 defensive rating, 4.52 DBPR, which is per our guy Evan Mia, and 82 stocks on the season. So that's blocks plus steals, which is second in the ACC. Also touched on this from the beginning of the handicap. Will UNC's three-point shooting differential continue to a degree? 14 percentage points is a lot. And like you said, who have they played? Who have they played defensively? No team they faced during this 6-game winning streak.
Who has that rim protection? I mean, that Cooper Flag has. No one.
Right. And Maluwatch, for that matter.
Sure. Right. Well, I mean, definitely not in the ACC.
Right.
It could definitely get ugly. This is a wide distribution of possible results. That's all I feel.
And so for that reason, you're going to take the points as long as it's in that maybe 9 to 11 range.
Yeah, as long as essentially I'm like, I do think there are some key numbers in college, 9.5, 6.5, 3.5, just getting the possession lines just because, that's how it kind of works with finishing a game. In terms of, okay, get it over this line because it changes your game result. It changes the way the plays are kind of done when you have a game surpassing those lines. It leads to different strategical adjustments. So they are key numbers. And I don't know, I haven't really studied that. I would imagine it's replicated, but like when I can get a 9.5, I usually I give it a little bit more value than like, oh, wow, getting a 10.5 over a 10, or an 8.5 to 9.5. I'm a little bit more excited about than 7.5 to 8.5 for sure.
I may wait to bet this one live to see if I can get a
A
little bit
late, a
higher
late,
than what the close is. I mean, that's another
yeah.
conversation. How does the market move in this, maybe right on open, couple hours before tip? Does Duke get money? Wake Forest was bet down, mind you, on Monday night. Didn't matter. Duke won the game by 30 plus. One other note, injury-wise for this matchup, doesn't sound like Duke is going to get Malik Brown back. Just kind of reading between the lines on what Shire had to say, their best defensive player dealing with that shoulder injury. He said he would have to be 100% right or close to it for him to play. I don't see why you would rush him back. You need him healthy for the NCAA tournament. He means that much to Duke at the defensive end of the floor, despite the fact that we mentioned how good Duke's interior defense is with Maluwatch and Flag. But Justin likes UNC to a degree. I'll probably wait to bet this one live. Any last closing thoughts on the matchup before we move over to Alabama-Auburn?
I don't hate the like late play, like the live play on UNC. If you can get like 18.5, if it goes bad early and expect them to come back into it, I could see it going bad early. I can't.
It's definitely I would say a stronger likelihood than UNC being up double digits at half or up even a couple points at half.
Right. I think so. If in that vein, you probably should wait. So we'll see. And again, you want to make sure they're getting decent shots, and you want to make sure they can figure out a way to get something at the rim, or maybe the jump shooters are shooting well, and you can see it in the shot quality. So we'll see. This is a tough game to bet. I'll tell you that much. It's another one where, if you want the games at the top of the totem pole to bet it, just take your favorite team and go 50% lifetime and have fun and just pay the 10%, I guess. But I don't know. I think that your money's much better spent going having fun betting on a Drexel game, but that's just me.